Actually, so nice. We have like windows is such a
Yeah, we get windows.
it's an
Yeah,
inspiring
you don't have
space.
windows.
No.
No, we don't either.
I don't have
Windows when ours was built.
We don't have windows.
Kept in the dark.
We need a mirror on the wall.
Reflect back. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. And we are live streaming and recording this meeting. Any comments made during this meeting are made as a part of our public record. There are some members that have joined us virtually and they will be participating in the meeting. Even though we can't see them on the screen, we know they are there unless they tell us that they are not there. If you have to leave the meeting, if you cannot hear us, or if you get disconnected at any time, please text either myself or Kristen to be re-engaged. If we can't establish a connection, we will pause the meeting until we can establish the connection again. You are required to vote, but only state a nay vote if you so choose. Otherwise, we will assume that you are in favor of the vote. I think I've covered everything. That's it. Everyone good with that? All right. Trying something new here. All right. Could I have someone move, please? Approval of the consent agenda number 4. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Herford. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move along to Electoral Area Director Committee recommendations of Mark Fleet. 1.1.
I'll move it.
Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Rainbow. Any comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 6.1.2 building bylaw. Okay, thanks. Good morning. Please join us. Okay. It's your turn.
Jay here to speak to any questions.
Fantastic. Floor is yours.
Oh, do you want me to just open it up?
Sure.
Yeah, so the building bylaw amendment is really just to update our building bylaw because we are going electronic. And so it's basically removing references to paper, which is sort of riddled throughout the bylaw. And it's adding some updated climatic data. That's sort of the summary of it all.
Okay, I love it. Any questions? None on the screen. No questions. So clear. Thank
I'm
you.
very glad to see this. That's gonna be awesome. And I'll move it.
Great.
And I'll second it.
Seconded by Director Rainbow. This is for the first 3 readings. The question, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Now moving for adoption. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Demare. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both.
Thank you.
That's easy.
Just, I've got one question.
You get one quick question.
Ken, when do you expect this to go live?
We're planning for May 1st. And we're already utilizing the Bluebeam software, and we're going to be initiating a payment system as well. It's probably I won't speak to what the provider will be, but there'll be an online payment system. So it'll be just a smooth transition for people getting a building permit.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, 6.1.3 Area A tax services funding for 2023 budget.
Move it.
Moved by Director Mayor, seconded by Director Rainbow. Questions? Comment? None? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Yep. Thank you. Okay, 6.1.4, Area C tax services funding for the budget.
I'll move that.
Moved by Director Mack,
Three
seconded by,
dots.
thank you. Seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 6.1.5, request for funding for Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society outreach program activities. Would Director Birch Jones like to move that?
I would be so pleased to move this. Thank you. And they have the report farther along and you can see why I'm keen to support them with some extra funding. Funding of $10,000 be granted to the Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society from Electoral Area B, Northern Area, BC Hydro payment in lieu of taxes reserved towards the cost of hiring a staff member or consultant to engage in key outreach program activities between April and September 2023. So moved.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Rainbow. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Birch Jones. Beavis, 6.2.1.
Yeah, she's been.
Just in case there's
Fire rescue.
Can I move all of that at one time or?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Okay, and seconded by Director Richmond. Are there any questions? We have Director LaFrance on the screen. If anyone has any questions. I see no questions. Therefore, I will call the question. All in favor?
We allowed to vote on that?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 6.3.1, next steps and direction to staff. This is the $30,000 to be included in the budget to hire a consultant to undertake the governance excellence initiative work that is being overseen by our policy development and review committee. Someone has moved that. Moved by Director Hannah, seconded by Director Rainbow. Questions? Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director LaFrance. Okay. And here we are at 7.1, parcel tax bylaws. And like fire protection, there's a whole bunch of them. I bet we can't move them all together. All the first. Okay,
Sorry, which ones can we do?
so we can do all the first, second, and third readings
One way vote?
all in one go.
Like that.
I've got a question first.
Sure, yeah.
Suzanne, is this this is a question for Director LaFrance?
Mhm.
Is the Gun Lake Fire one updated as we discussed yesterday? That if I approve this?
So this is the parcel tax amount that was already approved prior to your changes. So that amount will not change, but we discussed yesterday that I'll be moving that to a surplus and then recovering it the next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Right, so moving all the first, second, and third reading, that's moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. All in favor? Oh. Director Birch Jones, do you have a question?
Thank you. Suzanne, I saw the comment by financial implications, the estimated amounts per parcel within, et cetera, contain the 5.25% provincial fee. And that has to be rolled into it. There's no chance of showing that as a separate item.
It's shown together because that's how the taxes are shown. So everybody's tax statements will show this amount with the 5.25% provincial fee already built into it. So that's why we show it that way as well.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. No further questions? I will call a question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And now to consider the adoption of all of those facts. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Nair. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Seven point two, service establishment amendment bylaws, or they're all for adoption. Any questions? Seeing no questions, would someone like to move it? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 7.3 zoning amendment bylaw, area B egg zoning updates. Okay, I see Ms. Collenbrander on the screen. I'll turn it over to you, Kim, and then you can
Sure.
open it up.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is being brought forward for second reading. It's for the electoral area B zoning bylaw. It's an amendment bylaw. Primarily dealing with some required agricultural updates required by the ALC, as well as a number of other amendments. And I think Ms. Collenbrander can speak to it in a bit more detail.
Sure, yeah, I can elaborate a little bit on what we're proposing. So yeah, we're requesting second reading, and we're not requesting to schedule a public hearing at this time because we are proposing to bring that forward with the OCP amendment, which is scheduled to come forward to another board meeting, hopefully in the next couple months. So we've made some revisions since first reading based on input we received from the Area B AAC and the Ministry of Agriculture and ALC. They provided some additional referral comments. So based on that, kind of the main changes that we're proposing are related to the agricultural sections. So we're proposing to remove the requirement for farm status for secondary farm residences. This was based on AAC input we received. We are proposing some additional changes to the agricultural cannabis production definition. This was based on some ALC comments, just kind of minor tweaks to the language to clarify that we can't prohibit this use. It is now considered a farm use. We're proposing a single agricultural zone with a minimum parcel size of 16 hectares. So just to elaborate on that a little bit, we received feedback from both the ALC and the Ministry of Agriculture that they really are insisting on creating one single agricultural zone with a large minimum parcel size. So they're actually recommending 40 hectares as a minimum parcel size. So having discussions with the AAC about this, they really did want to see multiple zones. So we're hoping that providing this kind of reduced parcel size of 16 hectares will be a good kind of middle ground for that. Because SLRD staff do agree with the ALC and the Ministry of Agriculture that it is misleading to the public to have these multiple zones that show, in some cases, quite small parcel sizes, because we don't really see the ALC approving subdivision of ALR land. So yeah, that's something maybe to revisit in the future, but that's what we're proposing right now. And then I think the final kind of change related to agriculture is some additional split zoning regulations. We did hear from the Ministry of Agriculture that there were some concerns about potentially allowing for up to 4 dwellings on a parcel. So we're just proposing some additional minor changes to the language to clarify how we should look at split zone parcels with respect to permitted uses and density. We aren't proposing any further changes to when we split zone an agricultural parcel. So we're still proposing that where a parcel is less than 50% ALR, that it would be split zoned. So I think those are the main kind of agricultural changes. We're proposing some additional changes kind of to align with what we're proposing in Area C. So those are kind of more minor things like updates to definitions. We're proposing to create some gross floor area calculations for Area B because there currently isn't any calculations. There's some uses permitted in all zones that we're proposing to add. And then I guess the final one, which is related to agriculture as well, is we're proposing to change what we had previously proposed for the temporary farm worker housing provisions. So what we heard from the Area C farming community is that the regulations that we currently have are quite onerous for these applications. And it is now an ALC application. So we're proposing to just amend it in line with what we're proposing for Area C, which is to remove conditions related to temporary farm worker housing and just acknowledge it as an ALC application. And, you know, that's something that maybe we need to revisit in the future if there's concerns with not having any SLRD regulations related to that. And yeah, I think that's kind of an overview of all the changes that have occurred since second reading. So I'll open it up for any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions? Director Pettengill, go ahead.
Yeah, and I feel like I asked about this last time. I can't remember the answer. But in reading about the requiring farm status, the AAC feedback, as I understood it, is that they didn't see an immediate problem, so let's not put the restriction on. And I guess my concern is, you know, by the time we realize there's a problem and then adjust our rules, there could be a 3-year period or 2-year period where, you know, we're seeing secondary homes where we actually don't want them. And so I'm wondering about being proactive and, you know, on a case-by-case basis, pull that restriction. But I feel like there's a reason why we didn't go down that road, and I can't remember what it is. And so I'm just wondering if staff can clarify if there is a reason not to be more proactive and expect people to come and ask for an exception.
Ms. Kohlenbrander, do you have, or
this was really the AAC, which is the Area B Agricultural Advisory Committee. There were several members on that committee that did not believe that there should be farm status, and it became sort of was going back and forth. And so we decided, because the ministry and the ALC were not requiring that, we thought, well, perhaps it's not of concern to them. So we can, you know, we decided to go with the position of the AAC. Our staff original position was to require farm status because it really is our only tool to prevent speculation and just what you're talking about, which is people buying up farmland and building 2 houses, because the agricultural zones are now becoming more permissive than regular zones.
and then we lose that ag land forever.
Well, the studies have shown that when more and more non-farm uses start infiltrating ag land, the ag land is less productive.
Right. Yeah. I have Director Hopful and then Director Birch Jones.
Thank you. So I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification. And maybe you kind of already answered this. It says that under the temporary farm worker housing, that this means removing the previously proposed conditions and simply stating that the temporary farm worker housing is approved through the application to the ALC. But what about permanent housing? So I get that you don't want to take up the ALC land by having two homes on that, but I mean, is there any stipulations that could be created to have an actual workers home that is a permanent fixture on the land?
Yeah, I can answer that. So the ALC regulations now allow for the secondary farm residence, which isn't required to be specifically for employees, but that would be a permanent additional farm dwelling. It needs to meet certain requirements, but there's no application required.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Director Burch-Jones, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to express some appreciation to staff for stretching themselves, albeit with some difficulty, and hearing the recommendations of the Area B AAC. And there were some very good reasons for all of the decisions and the recommendations from the Area B AAC. And I feel we've really worked this, pretty much as hard as we can for this point in time. And I look forward to the day when we'll be requiring perhaps more regulation. Right now, what we have is a lot of fallow farmland. And in fact, some of our farms are failing. And so we are really working hard to support farming every way we can here in Area B. And this can be towards being part of the solution rather than part of the problem. I'm certainly willing to move these that's. I do recognize that a bit more work is going to be done on mapping and the referral process, but I'm confident that'll be in place by the time we get to the public hearing. And with that, can I move these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? No, or just the one that bylaw 1752, 2022.
Yep.
Should it say?
Moved by Director Burch-Jones and seconded by Director Mack. Further comments? Go ahead, Director Pettingill.
Yeah, I will support this. I'm not quite there yet on the idea of not requiring farm status, but I take it there may be some discussion and information I'm not clear on, so I'm happy to give second reading and see it go forward. But I would hope, or before I grant third reading, I want to understand a bit better the rationale or how this is helpful to agriculture. Yeah, I'm just not quite down that piece yet.
Okay. Director Burch-Jones, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm happy to have that conversation with you, Director Pettingill, for sure.
Any other comments? Director Needham tonight?
I was going to suggest that we actually do have a resolution around a public hearing and then we don't have to come back again for a resolution. And the idea would be that we would schedule the public hearing on the same date as the OCP public hearing, so they'll be together.
Okay, so I'll call the question on the second reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then a second resolution to schedule a public hearing in as you just described.
So the resolution will be for the staff to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get the language.
So we need to appoint the board members. That
For the chair.
That will be the alternate.
Okay, so the resolution is that we schedule a public hearing in conjunction with the OCP update
Yes, OCP bylaw.
amendment.
Yeah.
And to appoint Director Burch-Jones as the chair for the public hearing. And to appoint me as the secondary backup chair should Director Burch-Jones be unavailable on the date selected. And anything else? And to make the notification in the appropriate ways. Is that
That's
right?
exactly what I just meant.
That's what you
Yep,
moved?
yep.
And Director Pettengill seconded it. And are there any further comments? Or questions? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Skipping 7.4, we're moving right along to 8.1. Video verbal update.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just wanted to make the board aware of this this grant being approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and us moving ahead in partnership with Lillooet Nation, the village, the Pembroke Valley, Pemberton Valley Diking District to conduct a review of the delivery of diking services in the region. And so good project, and everybody wants to see what we can learn through this, and we have taken the lead because a local government partner needs to manage the grant with the ministry. So we're doing that, and we'll report out on that work, or that work will be reported out to all 4 stakeholders, and we'll see what we can learn.
Right. Thank you. Any questions? Or comments? Okay. We have someone move receipt of the verbal update. Moved by Director Mack, second by Director Pettengill. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, in point 2.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first quarterly report that we're bringing forward after the board directed the implementation of a performance management framework. So this is still a work in progress. The intent here is to report quarterly to the board on the status of the priority pieces of work that they've assigned, as well as on the broader corporate work plan, so that the board has insight into the initiatives that are being managed by each of our departments. And as well, a follow-up action list, which is in layperson terms, a parking lot for those pieces of work that have been identified and or assigned over time that haven't been assigned to staff yet to be started. I would highlight the fact that these tools are still in development, and we hope to be at some point this year moving to a digital approach to managing this, which would be better for the board to make its way through and easier for the public to understand as well. One of the other things that I'd like to do with these quarterly reports is take the opportunity, as we did in this report, of drawing the board's attention to a few items that we think have either hit an important milestone and or may have come across an obstacle or a delay. But in this case, I think the 4 items that were highlighted in the report are certainly worthy of noting for their progress. And the last thing I would mention is the intent will be to have our directors and our leadership team here and to provide an opportunity for the board to engage with them directly. If you've got concerns or questions or ideas about any of the work that's going on, they're all here with the exception of Angela, who's on vacation this week. And so I'll stop there and we're happy to take any questions or comments from the board. Oh, sorry, I forgot one last thing. Patricia's going to be speaking later on the agenda about the proposed communication strategy. And the last part of this is providing a quarterly update to the public following our quarterly updates to the board through the board chair. So pending any questions, that's this item.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, there's item 52 in the fuel. I know we got a governance. I'd like to see that one in there somehow. Somehow we gotta tackle item 52. It's a grant policy. I know Director Deputy Mayor back in 2017 put in a director report that was approved and never actioned. And I put one in 2021. It still hasn't been actioned.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that if it
Yeah, go ahead.
is welcome. Okay, I think this is a great opportunity to talk about, one, first to acknowledge the importance of that item. And it's a good example of the many, many things that the board's directed and or staff have identified that need to get done that haven't made their way onto a work plan and haven't had staff assigned. But it is and again, really looking for the board's feedback as this is the first kick at the cat, but as we move forward with this, hopefully a dynamic conversation about whether we're working on the right things at a particular point in time. So the board went through a prioritization exercise, initial strat planning exercise 1-2 December, and we have a plan to start the year with. But that plan is going to change. Things are going to emerge that the board might say, this is urgent. We need to get this done now. And this is one of the ways to have that conversation and for us to go away with that direction and say, okay, if this item needs to be moved now for whatever reason, what's the impact on our work plan? Let's make the adjustments and move forward. So that would be the first point I would make. And if a board member looks at these reports and says, well, I think this really needs to move somewhere now, and this is why, and the board agrees, then I would suggest the next step would be for us to go away and report back at the next board meeting on what the impact of that change to the plan would be, and whether or not we have the capacity. The second point I would highlight is that fuel with 50 some list items on it. When we report out on the Q3 performance this year in September, the intent would be for that to also be the start state of enabling the board to identify its priorities for 2024. So we'd be reviewing progress, but also helping the board determine what do they want to move in 2024. And that's also where that fuel list, that list of unassigned work and things that haven't been gotten yet comes into play. So there is a deliberate process here, and we're really looking forward for that kind of feedback on items that, that one time a year to set the priorities, but also every quarter to say, hey, this has changed, or a grant opportunities come up, or for some other reason, we really think the board should discuss elevating this priority and getting started on it now.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody?
There's a couple in the fuel I think are complete. I don't know if this is time to bring it up or just bring it up with you.
Either or. This is and the fuel is the fuel has not been scrubbed down to the degree that it should be either. It's still a work in progress, but where we really want to get that is down to those list of items that are that we would want to move ahead on if we had the ability. And the last thing I'll say about the fuel is it needs to be organized by department, because it's not that a particular item on that fuel can be assigned to any staff member or any staff department. And part of our process of reporting out to the board is we have a quarterly work plan. So let's say Mark and Protective Services are working through their annual work plan and they complete an item and they've got capacity, then that's when we will start plucking Protective Services items off that fuel and get to work on those. So it's meant to be dynamic, and we will be, as we move forward, we'll be reporting to the board by saying we've completed item X, and based on the board's direction, we're now putting item Y onto the work plan, and here's what that looks like. So it's very much meant to be a dynamic between the board and staff, but also dynamic in the sense that when things are done on that work plan, we're identifying that and we're introducing new items in year.
This is a tremendous progress for us, because we've had these lists and I think all of you have had these projects that you want to move forward, but when you've got so many priorities, then it's difficult to move anything forward without missing something or feeling like you're doing everything kind of halfway. And so I think that this is a great start, and it gives our community some real transparency into the work that we're doing. And hopefully it will set us on a course of really checking off some of these overdue projects and giving some wins. It's nice to have some wins when you feel like you've accomplished something. There's nothing better than. Go ahead.
Sorry because it sparked a thought to by having these lists, but not having a process to actively manage the work and report out and have that engagement with the board, I think we miss an opportunity to get some pieces of work done. So it was mentioned earlier, the use of contract support and those types. There may be items in that list that we don't have the capacity to work right now because the finance department has got X number of priorities on their plate as an example. But the board may say, and as part of the budget process, that, here's 10 or 12 items that if we get the ability to put them out to contract, we would support by contract, and they're done. Because there are items in that fuel that go back 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years that maybe contracting was the way to go, or maybe that's a solution now. So I think as we start to manage the work and get a better sense of the board's priorities, what we can actively manage, there's other tools that we might use to get things done if the board thinks they're that important, and they don't have to sit there for 10 or 12 years. And I would suggest if they're sitting there for 10 or 12 years, they probably shouldn't be on the list, because it does get to this, this sense that we're not moving forward and we're not, achieving things.
Or it's stale and the world has changed.
Right.
Director Crompton?
Thanks, Chair. Wondering, and you may have already said this, but is there a process that you propose, and I guess you're pointing to the budget, where we'll remove some of these, and would we need to remove them by resolution of the board since they were added by resolution of the board?
Yes, to both. I think we started this year, 2023, without, based on a 2-day board prioritization conversation. So we didn't build those conversations and didn't go into the fuel and existing tasks, if I can use that language, to the degree of detail that would have allowed us to tidy things up to start 2023. So I see that work being done as part of the prioritization effort for 2024. And to me, that would start with the Q3 report this year. And hopefully by that time, we've gone through the fuel, we've gone through all the historical resolutions passed and assigned, and we're able to put that in front of the board in a way to inform both priorities for 2024, but also perhaps things that have been overcome by events that might need to be removed by resolution.
And do you imagine like an omnibus resolution that says these are no longer relevant?
If we need it, yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that this is good practice. I think we've been doing this for many, many years, and it's good that we're correcting it.
Okay, anything else that you wanted to cover at this juncture?
No, thank you.
Okay. Resolution to receive for information. Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Herford. Comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed?
One question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that started with the communication program, that this will be shared, I presume, in a newsletter.
The intent for actually, I'll defer to Patricia and leave that question to her, because she's going to speak to it, and I don't want to steal her thunder, but she's going to address that in a later item. Okay,
Thanks.
Okay,
I think.
you ready? You want to skip ahead to that, Craig, or just carry on with the agenda and
Either way, if you wanted to deal with that item now.
no, let's deal with
because
it on the table.
Yeah, it leads right into it, so.
Do that. So we're skipping ahead, you guys, to 8.9, which is the communication strategy. And we have Lester Home here.
Bunch of the line. Good afternoon, good morning, still in the morning today. Patricia Westerholm, I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager for the SLRD. And in your agenda package, you have a request for decision report seeking endorsement of the communication strategy as presented. And along with that, there is a presentation slide deck, the strategy itself, including our 2023 plan and action items, and the communications toolkit, which is an internal resource that we use with staff to ensure that the tools are available for everyone to assist with their communications planning. So just wanted to share that as part of the package, so that you can see the tools that we have in place for the team. It's a lot of material, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions, but I think I should be able to touch on everything just going through this. I'll talk very briefly about the strategy itself and how it was informed. We issued public and internal surveys late last year and gleaned a fair amount of information from those surveys. And of course, we've just drawn on our knowledge of communications best practices, and we've had several internal conversations with teams around our current communications efforts and how we might be able to improve those moving forward. I would say that the strategy is really that overarching guiding document to help direct our communications work. And then within that, the plan is really about what we'll do annually and highlights our action items to help us tell the SLRD story. We would see moving forward that the strategy would probably be reviewed. It would be built into our strategic planning process, so reviewed with the start of each mandate. Whereas the plan is more of an annual piece that we would look at in the fall of each year to sort of review the initiatives that we highlighted for that year, look at the upcoming year and put a plan into place for that upcoming year. And then part of that is also a really exciting piece to plan to report back to the board as well annually on our initiatives and share that with the public as well. So that would come much later in the year. It's near the end of your package, but I did want to jump into that action items list that does highlight some of those things we're working on now and throughout the rest of the year. I think it's page number 534 in the big agenda package. It's number 35 of the specific attachment for this.
35?
Yeah, it's 5 in the whole agenda package. I think it's page 534. So it's just a table that highlights our initiatives for this year. And I'll just start at the top. So implementing a software solution for electronic newsletter delivery. We are really excited to be rolling that one out really quickly. In the survey results, both internally and externally, when we asked for suggestions on how we could improve both the way we communicate with the public and what we're communicating, the addition of the newsletter was the #1 suggestion. So it's something we're looking forward to doing very soon. We have engaged a service provider to enable us to do that electronically. So much like most of the member municipalities do, and other regional districts in the province and other organizations, we would have a system set up, we're promoting it to the public so that folks can sign up to subscribe by email, subscribe to receive the newsletter by email. We have lots of opportunity there. It enables us to manage from the back end the creation and the distribution lists that could be quite targeted if we choose to do that at some point. So that's a great tool. Phase 1 will be the monthly newsletter to align with the board meeting schedule. And the idea there is to capture some highlights from the board meeting and then use it as a tool to amplify other SLRD messages. So it might be at a given time in the year where we want to encourage people to sign up for the emergency alert notification, that sort of thing. And then some, anchor items about meeting schedules and different ways that the community can engage with us. And then, as I noted, there's lots of potential to develop additional formats and templates that we would want to use. Just keep in mind that, there's some resourcing around that. So we've left that, we've parked that for maybe a phase 2 implementation of that system. We've also, one of the suggestions for improvements in the internal survey was to improve ways of communicating with staff. So this system will also allow us to implement a staff newsletter, which the communications department will work with Monica in HR and the CAO's office to roll that out as well. So that's kind of the big one that's happening really soon. So the monthly newsletter is aligned to start next month, following the next month's board meeting. And we'll also use that format to be sending out another item that's on our initiatives list, and that's the quarterly update from the board chair, reporting back to the public as well, which is great.
I jump in just quickly, just on that item, so our intent with this quarterly reporting on performance and board priorities was to communicate that through the board chair's quarterly report following the meeting. And as Patricia mentioned, there'd be a newsletter a monthly newsletter on board business and decision making, those types of things, but linking performance reporting to the board chair's quarterly report is what we're proposing.
Yeah, and we'll reach out directly when we're launching the we have a public communications plan around encouraging sign up for the newsletter, and that's too. So that will build momentum with that over time. The other really large item on our initiatives list is the website redevelopment project. We'll be presenting more on this at a later date. This started off as a need to update the platform that our website is built on. It's without getting into too much of the lingo that is outside of my scope of area of expertise, that's for sure. It was built on a 777 platform, and that platform is sunsetting at the end of the year. So we need to upgrade to the next level to maintain the website's functionality and security. So that's the very layman's term. So it started off as the need to do that. Sorry. Go ahead. And then we through the surveys, there were some suggestions around improvements to the functionality of the website as well. So we're going to go with a little bit bigger scope of project to address some of those issues as well. So that's going to be rolling out shortly. We should be issuing an RFP in the next few weeks, and then rolling out with that for the rest of the year and launching in February. So that's really exciting as well.
Can I just pause you for a quick sec? Director Rich Jones has a question, and Director Rainbow has a question on things you've just said. Sure. If you don't mind, go ahead, Director Rich Jones.
Thanks very much, Chair Ford. Thanks for your report, Patricia. It's really thorough and very thoughtful. And I also was really pleased to see that at least at one spot in there, you have mentioned the newspaper. And I know this is really back in time for everyone, but up here in the north, when I'm talking to my Area B people and refer them to the website, it's not often really well received. But if there's something in the newspaper, I mean, this is a locally managed and run newspaper, and I'm happy to support, in particular, if there's, a positive news story that pertains to Lillooet or Area AB, or anything to do with emergency response. And if there's extra cost to use the newspaper, I have discretionary funds to support that if it's, not something that fits in the budget that you have. And I'm grateful that you mentioned the newspaper. Thank you.
Thanks. Director Rainbow.
Yeah, to go back to the newsletter, the newsletter. You'll be generating this from your department. Yes, so you would be responsible for the content that goes in there. Is there an opportunity for the electoral area directors to put something in that newsletter? And if so, how would we do it?
Yes.
Yes.
I have thought of it, and I just haven't had a chance to discuss with Patricia yet, and I'm sure she's onto it. But I think there's, in terms of engaging with elected directors, the committee meeting is a really good opportunity to maybe carve out as a practice that time and get some community engagement feedback on the agenda. But that's one way that's popped into my mind, and will be helpful so that it's not just a barrage of things coming in over the course of 30 days between one newsletter and the next. Is having a process that's clear.
Okay,
but
thank you.
Yeah, and we're working on we've just developed a bit of a schedule that we're sharing internally to encourage other departments if they have a project or something in particular that they really want to highlight, just to get people into the habit of how to submit those things, and so that they're not coming in last minute and that sort of thing. So we'd be happy to share that as well. And, you know, certainly items like the regional moment and things like that would be great to include in the newsletter too. But yeah, there's lots of opportunity with the newsletter.
Thank you.
With that software for sure.
Okay.
And then the other big piece, oh, sorry, was there another?
Yeah. I was curious, I like aligning the newsletter with these meetings. I was just wondering that there's a distinct difference around communicating out what happened and communicating out what's going to be discussed and sort of seeking feedback. So before or after the meeting, I just wondered if there was an intentional decision, or it sounded like reporting out what happened instead of building awareness around what's going to be discussed and sort of that seeking public feedback and that sort of thing, or are those just how you see those two sort of options around aligning with the meeting?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and something we have thought about. We currently, in terms of sharing information about what's coming up on a meeting agenda, for example, we do share meeting notices on our social media, on Facebook and the website. We don't get into a lot of detail about items on the agenda though, so there's certainly some opportunity there to highlight those. And we could, you know, this is a really, I would say, really easing into this, just to be able to manage manage expectations, both internally and externally, I think, and the workflow, but there's lots of opportunities. So I would say nothing's really off the table at this point.
Yeah, and Patricia may be speaking about bang the table here shortly, but there is a really good opportunity because one of the things I would observe here is that the nature of the agenda and the work doesn't lend itself as much to engagement on a regular month-to-month, meeting-to-meeting basis, but there are still those items. And that's where, you know, being able to say, here's what's coming up and point people to a bang the table page that is ready to go. So they're looking at that stuff. And I think that's kind of exciting too.
Q1 has been a very busy term for us. And so that's
interesting. And I do recognize it's easier to speak about things that you know the board has passed. You can go deeper into it rather than you know, that general awareness around meetings and seeking feedback. But it's I think both are beneficial. So I was trying to,
and it's happening that way, right? Where all the pieces of the puzzle are they're kind of all, it hasn't really been a linear, they're all kind of coming in at different phases. But that is the next item on the initiative list, is the online engagement platform, which is the same system that the District of Squamish and the Village of Pemberton use. And they've both recently, they've had some new additions to, like, some projects on their sites that have been really well done. So the Village's OCP project was laid out, I thought, very well on that site. So that's a good example. And the district has just hosted their accessibility plan project on their engagement platform. So those are really good opportunities to see what this will look like for us. So which is great because it's a very familiar platform for residents in the regional district, and they're all slightly different. They're each called something different to differentiate, but people will be familiar with them. And that's another one that we're launching really soon, very, very quickly. So that's, it's primarily an engagement tool because that is the way to facilitate two-way communication and engagement, and giving people the opportunity to not just receive the information from us, but provide their insights and be part of the conversation, which is great. But it is another communications channel as well, because it does, like I referenced it sort of links everything together and just provides another way for us, another avenue for us to communicate out as well. So, and we could ultimately be using the newsletter to connect those and to amplify that as well. We'll certainly use it to at least initially encourage registration for that site. And then as we do have projects loaded onto that site, we could use the newsletter to amplify the message around those engagement opportunities for sure.
Ask a question.
Well, it's not so much a question, it's just a comment. I think this whole program is going to help because one of the things that I felt that the SLRD didn't do very well was the communications of. And through social media, you saw it in social media. And some of the sites, various sites. And this way, we're gonna be putting out accurate information. So that all the misleading stuff that happens on social media, at least people will get the accurate information. So I'm very happy to see all this taking place.
Yeah, we're excited too. It's all of the tools work really well to support each other. And I'm really excited about reporting back on some of this as well, because we're seeing we recently, and through the website project, and not to get too derailed here, but we did a bit of an audit of the site recently and had a report on that. And one of the items that the person doing the audit shared with us that they couldn't quite explain the rationale behind, but it was clear to us internally, was one of the areas of the site that had had a lot of traffic, spikes in traffic, was the Pemberton transfer station relocation project. And as a service, it makes sense that that would be a high traffic area of the website, because people want the service and they need to go there to find out information. But we could correlate the spikes in the traffic to the site directly back to our communications around the project, and that we were sharing that on social media and directing people back to the website. So that was a real important tool for us to be able to see that the communications planning work pays off and does help us achieve our goals. So it'll be exciting to report back on some of that as well.
Thank you. Carry on.
I think that's it for me.
I wanted to make one plug on behalf of Patricia and I, because we're going to be hoping to engage the board in 3 short, sharp strategic planning sessions in April, May, and June. And that was just to buried in the work there was comment from the public around priorities. And I think the importance of us being able to tell our story, it's a challenge for all regional districts, but I think it's, as has been mentioned, it's been a challenge for us. So I hope we get treated nicely when we try and work through that process, because it's a key part of this work too, is being able to get to the point where, you know, we have that meat to communicate.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sorry that I kind of let questions in, but I think that was great, super useful.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Any comments? Okay, go ahead.
No, I think this is fantastic. I would just, and maybe this is to something I would expect to cover this in the governance committee maybe, but this is a plan where I would sort of anticipate more that the board would receive this rather than approve this. But you know, I think it's fantastic.
Oh, the strategy itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to move receipt?
Well, it looks like, are you looking for approval at this point? Or
We were, so that may have been, an administrative error as opposed to a deliberate failure. Yeah.
okay, if you don't have a preference, I will move receipt.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Director Demare, comments? Director Stoner? No, okay. Anyone else? Oh, Director Birch-Jones, go ahead.
I'm pretty comfortable approving it the way it is. I was very impressed with it.
Okay. I think there's merit to both. We have a motion on the floor. I think they achieve the same outcome. So we'll leave it at that. And unless anyone feels really strongly that we need to approve rather than receive, I think receive is the appropriate method at this point. If there are any other comments, go ahead, Director Mack.
So by just moving receipt, then what's the process going forward? When does this thing come back to get approved? How long does that take?
Director Pattengill.
So in my mind, this is sort of, we said at a higher level, the outcomes we'd like to see, and then this is staff's area of discretion to decide this is the plan that gets us there, and it's in staff's authority to move forward, and they're letting us know this is how we're moving. So it's sort of more for our information, how I would see this level plan personally.
And I think to expand on that, if we approve it, then staff have to come back for adjustments to the plan. Whereas if we receive it, it allows staff to be flexible and move within the plan. which I think gives staff more discretion around the work with updates to us as they need to. I'll go back to Director Mack and then I'll come to you.
So if the staff was looking for approval now, don't you think they've already figured that all out?
Yes. It's
So-
semantics, really.
Pardon me?
It's semantics. It gives us, if we're approving it, we're stamping it and no changes without further amendments. If we receive it, it says we approve it, but we allow you to kind of work it, keep it nimble, if that makes sense. If you feel strongly, we
Sticks
can
in one mouth,
change.
doesn't the other.
Exactly.
I'm more interested in what staff feel about it. If they
Okay.
feel slighted because we are receiving it, then I want to change it.
Let's go to staff and then I'll come back to you.
I've got a relevant
Okay,
comment on
Go
this.
ahead.
There is a communication policy.
Yes.
We currently have one. We don't have anything in front of us that says the revised or amended communication policy. So we need that policy, the amendment policy to actually approve it.
Okay.
Yes, and so in this report, that's mentioned, that a next step is to come back with the policy and we, yeah, this is a conversation we could have avoided had we made that clear, but yeah, I think receipt is fine and we'll be back with the policy.
Okay.
Okay.
Everyone good? Everyone good? Okay. Go ahead, Viv. Director Jones.
Thank you, Chair Ford. I'm fine with receiving this report at this time. And I really appreciate all the work staff put into it.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Lunchtime.
Is it lunchtime? Not quite.
Oh,
You have 20 minutes.
Keep on trucking, Chair, keep on trucking.
Doing this. We're going back.
Check it out.
Yeah.
8.3. We're talking about an accessibility advisory committee and terms of reference. And who is doing this? 8.3.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is seeking the board's approval to establish an accessibility committee with, it is proposed, one board member appointed by the board to chair the committee. And so to assist with that, I've drafted proposed terms of reference, which of course are open for revision and feedback. But operate as a starting point to get the committee off and running and can of course be updated at any time by the board as the work progresses. So the terms of reference have broken the work into a phase 1 and a phase 2, which is the phase 1 is just to bring back, not just to bring back a accessibility plan for the committee to bring that back to the board. And then once that's established, once that accessibility plan is approved, the committee would continue on with the specific work as set out in phase 2, which is just ongoing, making recommendations to the board on accessibility matters and acting as a resource of the board to refer items to if the board so wished. So I'll just finish by highlighting a few things. In the staff report, and it is a staff recommendation and which is embedded in the terms of reference that we start off simple, or that the committee's work starts off simple and focused with an ability to grow over time. And also there's a comment in the report that the board might wish to consider referring potential accessibility initiatives or priorities to the strategic planning process later in 2023, or the board could wait until the accessibility committee does its work in bringing forward an draft accessibility plan, which presumably will be next year. And then lastly, staff is seeking the name of a board member to be the staff member on the select committee. Or there could be more than one board member if the board wants.
So
to approach that.
for clarity, a board member to be the chair could be more than one. And then other community members will be sought through advertisements through our communications channels. And then 1 or 2 staff members that will be facilitating the committee.
The corporate services department will
Facilitate.
facilitate.
Okay,
So how big a committee are we looking at? It's going to be quite large by the looks of it.
Well, as the terms of reference, and there is, the legislation has no requirements. So what is proposed in the draft terms of reference is a minimum of 3 and no more than 9, but that can, it's at your discretion.
Just looking at the requirements, the notes in the act about the makeup of the committee. Half the members are persons with disabilities, individuals who support organizations that support persons with disabilities. At least one Indigenous person. Reflect the diversity of persons in British Columbia. Tricky to get that together.
we have a committee in Whistler, and it is 10 community members. And it meets twice per year, and pretty broad variety of people. So it's a good committee, not overly taxing, that definitely gets some good recommendations. Mike, then Jenna.
I looked at the terms of reference and they seem generally pretty good. I didn't spend a lot of time on them because my assumption was that the committee would be sort of refining terms of reference or outside of the board makeup, which we would decide here so that we can go out and build it. I was assuming that the committee would sort of finalize the terms of reference, or is the hope that the board sort of settles on all the terms of reference for the committee ahead of time?
The board will approve some form of terms of reference, so that we have something to take out to the community, so they know what they're doing, what they're being asked to participate in. But they can of course give their feedback in terms of their recommendations for changes to.
So I figured I just didn't want to go too deep into some of those terms going, well, that I feel like the committee's going to want to input on that. But like you said, we got to go to the community with sort of this is what our expectation. Okay, thank you.
Director Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm curious about the decision as to whether this should be a board committee or a staff committee. And if staff gave some thought in the proposed terms of reference as to why it should be chaired by a board member as opposed to being a staff committee with potentially a board member sitting on it in an official capacity or as a voting member. But I feel like a lot of this work is internal, especially to begin with, and speaks a lot about operations and how the organization is accessible. Part of that is board meetings for sure, but it's not a huge part of an accessibility plan for the organization. So I'm just curious why it would be a board committee and not a staff committee.
Thank you. Because of the requirements in the legislation about who has to sit on the committees, if it's a staff committee, I'm not, we would have to, we would have to have half of the members are persons with disabilities or are from organized. So I'm just not sure how that would work. So to launch it, I followed, an advisory committee model.
Yeah, I think if I may through the chair, the other consideration, and we've decided in Squamish to make it a staff-led committee. It also takes a lot of the onus, the administrative burden off of the way that the meetings can be scheduled and managed. And so I just think it's something to consider in terms of whether we want to put in how much legislative services time do we put into scheduling additional meetings, having them posted, so on and so forth. If we structure it as a staff advisory committee, you can still have a board member attend as a member of that committee. And you can choose to make them open and virtual or hybrid, but I think it drops the barrier from a legal meeting administrative process standard.
Yeah.
That may be up for consideration.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
So, if it's a staff committee, it could be, the makeup of the committee could be exactly the same as if it were a board committee. You're just changing the chair and changing the. Yeah.
Does that work for you? Like within your capacity, in your department's capacity. I think the legislation, the Accessibility Act, requires that every community participate in this type of engagement with the community. Some communities have been doing it for a long time. Many communities have done none. And we are required to accomplish this by 2025. I think it is. So we're behind a little bit, and that's okay, because that's just where we are.
So what have we got to accomplish this year, Christopher?
Strike the committee,
Just strike the committee.
right?
Oh,
Strike the committee and have a first meeting.
okay, okay.
So I think it will evolve. I think what we want to do is we want to get this off the ground and start the work. There may be some value in engaging with Village of Pemberton, District of Lillooet, District of Squamish, and Whistler, to ground truth some of the momentum that's already been built in the municipalities to supplement some of, to get us a foundation to start from. And use those resources rather than trying to, because this is definitely, it's important, but our capacity is just not there. Director Birch-Jones.
Thank you, Chair Ford, and thank you for this report. I like the suggestion of it being staff-led, and I also appreciate what Chair Ford is saying about trying to borrow and build on a little bit of what's already been done by some of the municipal committees in the region. That would be a great way to start. But one thing that was crossing my mind when I was reading through it was, will we consider paying an honoraria for some of the citizen participants that we are hoping will be on this committee? And I'll just float that question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an emerging trend in trying to attract people to participate in these voluntary boards is becoming increasingly difficult. And when you have very specific criteria of the demographics of people that you want to engage, either scheduling meetings at a time that works for people after work or on weekends, and that doesn't always align with staff work time, can be really challenging. We don't want to have barriers to being a part of an accessibility committee, I think.
No kidding. Thank you.
But it's true. And so I think that's something that we would need to contemplate at the outset before we put out a call for members, unless you have people in mind that you think would participate.
I do not.
You do not.
We don't have any budget
Right.
for this.
No.
And we can certainly look at that.
Okay.
But for 2023, We currently have no budget for honorariums. We also have other advisory committees. If this continues to be set up as an select committee, we have other advisory committees that do not receive remuneration.
Yeah,
So it's
it's tricky. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
No, I'd just like to say I'd be interested in working on this committee.
Okay.
It's some work I've done quite a bit of stuff in this area in the past, and it is an area of interest.
Okay.
I don't, regardless of what kind of committee it is.
Thank you. Director Burch-Jones?
I'd be happy to be a backup for Director Rainbow.
I'm gonna put this out there. Let's start small. Let's do this as a staff-led committee. I will put forward Director Rainbow and Director Burch-Jones to be the inaugural members. And then when we get this committee together, they can review the terms of reference. They can boil down, you know, kind of the nuts and bolts of what we want to accomplish, and then come back to the board with recommendations of changes to the terms of reference, changes to the board composition. I would also recommend that we reach out to Chelsea Walker, who lives in Area C in Owl Ridge. And she is the executive director of the Invictus Games, and has been a tremendously valuable member of the Whistler Adaptive Sports Society for more than a decade. She's contributed hundreds of hours of volunteer time to our community. And I don't know if she's interested, but I'm certainly, I'm betting that she is. Because she is incredibly dedicated to this work, and maybe start from there. And then obviously put a call out through our communications challenge channels for other members with interest. So not setting a specific number of interest, but bring back some recommendations of community members. Is that fair?
specific people, like once we put.
Like put the call out in general.
Okay.
And then seek people with expressions of interest, and then bring back.
And I suggest that, because can maybe you refer this back to staff?
Yeah.
To look at this as being a staff committee.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of experience in staff committees, especially with directors sitting on them, so
Okay.
I'm not really sure what that is. Just because I don't have experience and because we haven't done it here doesn't mean we can't, but I don't know what I don't know right now.
Okay.
So maybe just refer it back and then we bring it back with any, and if we can kind of rejig it as a staff committee, we'll bring it back next month.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just, I don't know if I should wait until there's a resolution and comment, or I can move that. Move that staff, bring it back as a.
Sure.
Comment, move that staff, bring the accessibility committee back to a future meeting.
I'll say.
Okay, comment?
Yeah, I think I was gonna ask the same question as Director Stoner, with the understanding that a staff committee is just a lower barrier, lower overhead, allows more flexibility. I do think, you know, I heard the comment about bringing back a list. I think if we go staff committee, then the board no longer decides who's on the committee.
Right.
So we have to be comfortable with not having those decisions, which personally I am, and I would shoot for, you know, whatever is the lowest barrier, because it's going the easiest is sort of my intent.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do like this approach, and I hope that we can find a way through. I'm not sure what the adjustments would be needed for that, but I did want to float that as is a requirement of all municipalities, this work is ongoing, and perhaps those groups have people that enjoy being engaged in that way so much they'd like to be part of this as well, similar to the composition of this board, where there's municipalities with there could be people there, and that could be a source when we get to the recruitment phase, or give some intentional thought to whether that's appropriate or not. But feels like it could be an area where there's some folks that are already engaged and could lend their expertise to this process as well, given that it overlaps in all of our different areas.
Thank you. Recommend? No? Okay. Thank you to Director Rainbow and Director Birch Jones for putting your hand up. And we'll keep that in mind as we move through this process. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Like 5. Is Mark coming back though? Or do you want to do something? Yep, let's do this before lunch. So this is now the application for PEPF EOCs and training grant funding stream. And I had the great honor of being there for the announcement of the $150 million that was put into this fund by Minister Ma and the Premier. And we're applying for $30,000 and I hope we get it. Okay.
Mark, will they come and talk to us?
I think so. All right. We have Mr. Fusca on the screen. Welcome. And I'll turn it to you, Mr. Phillips.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your time. I will make it quick and I'm going to hand it over to Mike Fusca, who's our emergency program coordinator present on this item.
Morning, Chair and Board. My name is Michael Fusca and I'm the Emergency Program Coordinator for the SLRD. Today I'm bringing forward this RFD for the Board to endorse our application to the 2023 Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Emergency Operations Center and Training Grant Funding Stream. The Protective Services Department would like to use these grant funds to host a regional emergency operations center exercise in October using an atmospheric river scenario similar to what we experienced in November 2021. Our member municipalities and local First Nations in the Sea to Sky region have also been invited to take part in the common scenario and exercise their own EOCs on the same day. The grant funds will be used to contract a consultant to design and lead the exercise. Some funds are also earmarked for pre-training for EOC staff and the purchase of EOC equipment to enhance regional collaboration during emergencies. Aside from practicing emergency response, the exercise will also be used to validate EOC improvements we're currently making as per our lessons learned from our last regional EOC exercise that occurred in October of last year. More details are in the RFD itself, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Great.
Very good.
Questions? No? Would anyone like to move it? Director Herford, seconded by Director Richmond. Comments? This is good work. I'm excited. These are fun days.
We're going to get the board as well. So
Yes. Yeah, I'm pumped. All right, Director Birch Jones, did you have a comment? No, just a thumb. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll call for a recess of this meeting for
Thanks,
lunch.
Michael.
Please be
Thank you,
back.
Chair.
And on the screen, we will mute the room. Hi, Lori. Hi, Vivian. Hi, Jack. Can you give us a wave that you're back, please? All right.
That was very good. There you go. Now I'm there.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. All right, we'll call this meeting back to order. And we are at 8.6. Southdown Biosphere Regional Region Initiative Society request. This is a request from Ruth Simons to continue to support the principles of cooperation and to commit to the forum. This isn't a specific date that they're requesting at this point. It's just saying that we will host at some point. Is that right?
Yes.
We hosted last year. You hosted last year in Break Creek.
Yeah, that's it. I think I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to comment on that, I've already told Ruth that if nobody else is interested in the area, I'm happy to do that again.
Okay.
If another member, Squamish want to do it, or if Whistler want to do it, that's fine.
We were supposed to do it. Whistler was supposed to do it in 2021, and then it was virtual. We were going to do it at Brew Creek, but now Brew Creek's out of business. So there's I don't know the details. Okay. So yeah, it's just letter in support of the initiatives and that we commit to remaining engaged. Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. Very supportive of this work. I just have a question for staff in terms of resourcing, because I know that especially section 3 is not in the current work plan, and the proposal is to move that to 2024. Are there any concerns with moving points 1 and 2 based on current staff capacity?
No.
Great. Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none. So we'll move the recommendation. Moved by Director Richmond, second by Director Stoner. Comments? Is that why you were here? Did I just totally usurp the work that you were going to present to us?
Jay, you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions if you. Thank you.
I'm so
Well done.
Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Fantastic
Thank you.
report. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, let's move along then. I didn't call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 8.7 Regional Invasive Species Service Progress Reporting and Budget Request. What do we have?
Who's doing that?
I don't. Miss Reed. She prepared the report, but she is not currently here.
Vivian, do you have a question?
Are we waiting for a staff report? These are excellent reports, by the way. Or are we just receiving these reports?
I think we're just receiving, and if anyone has any questions, we can source someone to respond. Did anyone have any questions about these reports? Go ahead, Director Pattengill.
Yeah, just wanted to understand a little bit. It just, the challenge seems just so vast, and there's incredible work being done. And I don't want to suggest at all, let's not bother, it's too big a task, but I just don't have a good sense of, is this budget nearly sufficient? Is it sufficient? Are we, or should we, would it be meaningful to increase this? Or I'm just sort of looking at trying to wrap my head around that.
We have staff coming in to answer your question. Here we are. Hello, Ms. Reed.
Hi.
We are talking about the invasive species reports, and the question, have you been watching along? The question from Director Pettengill, do you want to repeat?
I didn't want it to play in here.
Yeah, just looking at the report, I mean, there's excellent, incredible work being done. but the challenge is just so vast. I'm having, just trying to wrap my head around, is the budget even close to where it needs to be? It's actually quite good, all things considered. I just don't have a great sense of where we are on that.
Well, I think there's no chance to increase the budget right now based on the bylaw, and they're working on that. And I do think that there is a need for more funding for more projects that need to be done for both societies. There's a lot of work they're not able to get done.
Director Birch-Jones?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Reed. And I think we should be spending a lot more money on this. I think these are dollars very well spent, and what we spend now saves us a lot of money in the future, not only to sort of protect agricultural land, but also the habitat for the biodiversity. I mean, invasive species are the second greatest threat to biodiversity. And so, as you know, I mean, and you saw, I just voted for an extra 10,000 for the Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society. And that's just to bridge the gap while we increase the service area requisitions, which should come into place for next year. But in the meantime, this is a very good place to spend more money. And you can see from the reports that they could do more if they had more money. And I'm extremely impressed with what they're doing with the small amount of funding that they do get.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Reed? No? So could I have a motion to receive the reports? Moved by Director Richmond, second by Director Mack. Comments? No question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reed, for being here.
I'm looking at the next steps down there. Do we need a resolution for that, or receiving the report? Does that give the staff permission to do that? We're still about
I
staff
think it's in the
providing.
work plan. Yeah,
It's
it's in the work plan.
Don't
No.
need anything else. Okay.
Okay, pitch-in week is April 17th to 23rd. Most of you will be here for our board meeting that week. I suggest that we spend our lunch out picking up some trash on the dike. How does that sound to
So
everyone?
long time since I've done that.
We did it last year.
I wasn't here.
Oh, you weren't here.
That was,
You were away.
when's this meeting?
It's next month and you can participate. Won't that be fun?
Motion to,
Jenna and I will pick up garbage in Victoria.
I make the motion to declare pitching week and the staff recommendations or initiatives.
Thank you, and issue the challenge to our member municipalities to also participate in their own communities.
Absolutely.
Friendly amendment. I'm sorry. It's like,
It's good.
yeah, it's good. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Second it. Oh, Vivian, go ahead. No, you took your hand down. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, wait.
Just one more thing. Okay, well, we are flying through this agenda. We're at 9.1, board roundtable. I want to preface today that next week we have a forum of the chairs of all the regional districts, and myself and Craig will be attending. And so in your board report, please give me one thing that you're proud of in your area that I can then report back to the other regional districts, because I want something to really bang on the drum about. So let's start over here. Start us up.
Well, I think I will pick on which Director Herford presented on a couple of times sessions ago. The Fire Hall and Emergency Operations Center was it below budget, I believe, or at very least on budget. Very high environmental standards in terms of building performance. I think was it something in the neighborhood of 90% of the construction waste was kept out of the landfill. And it's just a really important and fantastic focus on emergency preparedness that we need, and it's I think a really great success for the corridor as well as the district of Squamish.
Amazing, thank you. And do you have any quick update on things going on in DOS?
Just the one thing I did attend at Totem Hall, Squamish Nation's Totem Hall Slough ceremony. It's the welcoming of the herring and a blanketing of John Buchanan, who's been very involved in the restoration of herring. It was sort of very moving ceremony, and the whole community got together and carried the cedar and hemlock boughs down to the waterfront to put them in to provide some places for the herring to leave their eggs. And it was just a wonderful, amazing event and sense of community and so on. So really nice to attend that.
That's awesome, thank you.
I got the moment tomorrow, so I could just pass it on.
Well, I'm happy to say spring is here. It was 20 degrees in Darcy yesterday. Very sunny, very nice. The Anders Lake Boat Launch is starting to get busy already. And I want to thank Mark and his team for the great work. This can be your moment. The great work that is being done with assistance to the people on Reed Road. I think that him and his group and Sarah before that have done an outstanding job looking after those folks. And also, Swana, looking forward to all the work being done by Ed and his staff on water main upgrades and maintenance in Darcy and Divine and whatnot. So that's all good stuff, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Stoner, want to add to Squamish?
Oh, I thought I was off the hook. Relevant to what we were speaking about earlier in this meeting, the district did just launch its community engagement on our accessibility plan, and we've launched our accessibility committee. And so excited that work is underway. It's something that we all need to do, and look forward to sharing what we've learned and across the border.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, very pleased to say that after 6 years, the BRVC LaJoy Lake Residents Association Aeration Project is going to have authority to proceed. It started in 2017. All the funding for this project so far has come from the EAD committee. And I want to thank all the directors that have approved the funding for that project. But Cascades Environmental 2017 did a preliminary study and a report. And then after that, when I got on, the LaJoy Lake Residents Association were able to have the #1 renowned thermologist is BC, who teaches at BCIT, and also the director of BCIT Rivers Institute, wanted to do some work on it and wanted to get an intern in there that would write his thesis, a student on that lake. There was a lot of work went into that, and unfortunately COVID hit and they couldn't find a student. So they proceeded and they got some more funding and had Cascade Environmental eventually put in permits, one with the Water Sustainability Act and one for land tenure. And we've been waiting for a couple of years now. And the Water Sustainability Act is going to give them authority to proceed. And in the meantime, the limologist at BCIT did find a student, and the preliminary report is that the lake is dead. The lake is not turning over. And that's what this aeration project is going to be able to do, is to get the water turning again. So they'll run the aeration system 5 weeks in the spring and 5 weeks in the fall. And it's a 5-year program. And hopefully by then, it starts to turn over and get oxygen back into the mid and lower levels of the lake. So, yeah, just, they've worked hard. That little association there, which is a committee of the BRVCA. And that's why they became a committee, because they needed a legal identity to be able to get their applications in. It worked out really well.
Awesome.
Yep.
What kind of ologist was that person?
Limologist.
The limologist. Oh, yeah.
I've never heard of one.
No, I haven't. Oh.
There's a program, a PCIT for it.
Oh, okay.
All right. Director Rainbow.
Just a few little bits and pieces. Number one, I don't know if you guys got a letter from Jeffrey that built that little new coffee shop at Britannia. I wasn't sure who it went to, but it was really nice to get, because he was thanking the SLRD in general and staff in particular for the support that he got. And yeah, I'm sure I've shared it with Kim. And I just thought it was really, it's really good for one of our clients who's just been through the whole process of it was an exhausting process for him, not our fault as much as the supply issues and so on. But yeah, I was happy to see that. My biosphere signs for the for House Sound are almost ready and will be up, I hope. I was hoping to have them in place so I could have photos of them for the next House Sound Forum, but maybe not for that. Really looking forward to this summer in the Upper Squamish Valley, and really appreciate the work the staff have done to put a new bylaw in place, and hope that it will help us get some level of order into the activities up there. And last thing I've mentioned several times about the commercial area at Britannia Beach. And Ahmed and I had a little tour the other day, looked in some of the buildings. You know, when we went through the bylaw process here and zoning and everything like that, they're talking about accommodation in these heritage buildings. And I don't know, I was thinking at the time of rooms that would look something like this, you know, the gyp rock and square and all that sort of stuff. But you get into what they've done is they sort of preserve the character of some of the buildings. So you've got these great big wooden beams exposed, or a curved ceiling left in place and things like that. They're really been imaginative in the way they've dealt with it. And when that's done, when that's complete, it will, in my view, by itself be a tourist attraction. There will be people wanting to come in the same way as they go down to Washington State to see those towns down there that have been themized, or whatever you want to call it. So it's moving along, obviously not as quickly as residents of Britannia would like to see. They're anxious to get their grocery store back, but it's looking good. So that's area two.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you. Director Hopful.
Hi. Okay, so one thing, we just finished our first and second and third reading of our financials last night. 5.7 was our tax increase, if passed on the final reading. So one of the highlights of that, I would say, would be the pool is now going to be open for 10 months from September to June inclusive. And a few reasonings for that decision. Swims raised just over $200,000 in 2021 to support the pool opening. And there's still some funding left over from that they will be putting towards to help us with those costs. And the other major variable is heating. The pool and the entire rec center is very costly for heating between hydro and pellets. So we're going to move forward with a heat exchanger that will move the heat that we are losing from the roof of the ice arena. So have to keep the ice arena cold in the bottom. So all the heat's going up the top, right? So we're going to put in a heat exchanger for about $100,000. Again, it will move the heat that we are losing from the roof of the ice arena, and we're going to move it to the pool and other areas of the rec center. And we believe that that will cut the heating costs immensely, thereby allowing less funds to be allocated to heating and more to services. So we're going to get that in ASAP in the next 6 months anyways. And then we'll reevaluate in about 18 months to see the impact of that. And I say like ASAP, but we want to wait until the pool is closed between July and August to actually implement that. So I think, you know, and meanwhile, SWIMS is advocating for pool use. So they're doing their bit to make sure that we have lifeguards trained and swimming lessons booked and sessions for lane swims and seniors and physio and all of that. So it really is a turning point for Lillooet, because our pool is, you know, 7 years old, I think it is. And, you know, we weren't expecting to go down here, but now that we have a solution, we're really hopeful that this solution will solidify having the pool open longer and being able to give that service to our residents. And that's it. Thanks.
Director Birch Jones.
Thank you, Chair, and kudos to Mayor Hopple and the council for supporting the pool. I'll be continuing to assist from Area B, both through the rec center and through supporting SWIMS. I think it's absolutely marvelous. And of course, all the residents in Area B appreciate that facility as well. We have an emerging issue with a new manager of our local grocery putting up even more barriers to selling local produce at the grocery store that everyone gets their groceries from in Lillooet, but we're working on that. But in the meantime, on a more positive note, which is what Jen asked for, I think, is the Uclumac Community Garden is doing well, and they have linked up with Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society. You can see some of that in the report that I think we have in this package, and that could be very dynamic. And with the hub also helping to coordinate, they're getting ready for farmers market, and it's looking pretty optimistic. So, and I heard a meadowlark sing the other day. So spring.
Amazing, thank you. And Director Crompton. Jack.
It's not here.
He's there.
He's not.
He's there.
Where?
He's there.
Oh, there.
Right here. So not much to comment on. Maybe the chair can add anything that she that I missed, but last night we considered 2 more of our buildings down at Cheakamus, which was nice, and it's good to see those buildings going up. And it's busy. It's just really busy in town, and that has its own challenges. But I think I've talked about those at every board roundtable in the last 3 months. Businesses are pressing really hard to deliver this season, and then, you know, it's nice to see sun because it means that there'll be a little bit of a reprieve, but it has been an unbelievably busy time for our town. So I think that's all I have for today.
Okay. I was also going to speak about affordable housing. So you've covered that. I think we'll move on. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I know my colleagues covered a few things earlier, but I did want to just mention we've got a few. We have a grand opening happening of the Foundry, which is so our youth services, and it's going to be amazing. That's happening at end of the month. It's operational now, but the grand opening will be on the 31st, I believe. And that service is housed inside a Spirit Creek, which is affordable housing development that's coming online. 76 units, mix of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. It's coming online at the same sort of the same timeline. So this is a big project for our community. We're really excited to see it all come together, and looking forward to the events that day, and there'll be tours and stuff. So March 31st, feel free to come by and check that out. It'll be exciting. And also we have a big project at the Adventure Center. So visitors information and home of the Chambers and Tourism Squamish is under renovation at the moment. And the project's really about increasing the flexibility of the space. It's really interestingly shaped space and building itself to make it more basically a modernization, and also some work on a immersive Squamish story, telling the Squamish story there better, and making sure that theater works and all that. So we should be back operational on time for the main tourism season. May is the projected at this point, but tourism with Squamish sort of being the gateway to Sea to Sky, that visitor information function is still being performed there by Tourism Squamish in a trailer that they've done there really well, sort of dressing up as their temporary home before they're back to the main building. So if you're wondering what's happening at the Adventure Center, so there's a couple of things that happen from us.
And there's 2-for-1 haircuts in Squamish right now. Just so you know.
He has a choice. That's
It's not free, we just was a rate.
Awesome. I guess now is as good a time as any for me to share with you and with the community that as the president of the UBCM, I had the great honor of participating in the Partnerships in Municipal Innovation project, which is hosted by FCM and Global Affairs Canada. And it is a 6-year commitment to the NLC, which is the National League of Local Councils in Cambodia. They are an organization very similar to FCM in that they represent all local governments, and there are 4 orders of local government in Cambodia. So they have municipal councils, urban, municipal councils, rural. There are regional districts, which are called SENCATs, and a fourth that I can't remember the name because it was not an English word, and I will look it up. But the purpose of my trip was to continue the work that our organization has started. We've been there 4 times over the last several years. And it was an opportunity to learn from their board about the challenges that they face in advocacy and communication strategy. And we did a full day session on lifting women into local leadership, which was the focus of this year's training. And so I was able to share some of my experience of the last 8 years in working in this space. I shared stories about regional districts and municipalities, and our challenges are just as, they're similar. Lack of funding, how they're funded is different. Where they don't have property taxes, they have other revenue streams, but they're still just as limited in their flexibility in providing the services that their communities ask for. And so it was a wonderful experience. I think I learned more about myself and about the work that I wish to do. And I'm still unpacking it in my mind about how to really move forward with this gift that I have. So I'm really grateful to all of you for supporting me and being a part of this organization, UBCM, and continue to do the work and bring it home. That's that. We'll move along to 9.2. Special events bylaw amendment for area C. You want to move it?
I'd like to move it as presented.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Seconder, Director Demerick, questions? Go ahead, Director Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. I was not at the last meeting, so I may have missed the context for this, but didn't we just approve the special events bylaw amendment like 2 months ago?
I don't believe.
Kim's nodding.
Yes, you would do it.
Yeah,
And so the guess this is a question to you, Director Mack, in terms of what has changed from the time that it was adopted and you're thinking now as to
Well-
why you don't want to be included.
no, I don't want to be included, and my constituents, I've had a lot of feedback from them. This is, I believe the ALC should be the one that does the enforcing, if there's any enforcing to do. I don't think we should be in that business. We don't have any issues. We don't have the same issues that are going on in the Upper Squamish Valley that may require something like this. I think it's just an added amount of work for the people that put on these events. That's not necessary. Like I say, it's an ALC regulation, and if they're having an issue with it, then they should be the one that is enforcing it, not us, because we don't have the ability to enforce it.
But
Through the chair, I appreciate that we don't have the ability to enforce it, but this allows us to start to gather information to better understand where the risks are. And so what is the concern in doing so?
I don't think it's necessary. We're not having an issue. So why are we putting more bureaucracy in place to find out if we are going to have an issue? At this point in time, we're not having an issue. And I don't think this valley is going to change with the amount of people that are doing events. It's the same people, the same farms. I just don't believe it's a necessary thing.
I guess through the chair to staff, given that this work was just recently done, can you speak to the rationale as to why Area C was included and the amount of work that it'll be to do to go back on the thing that we just approved?
Through the chair, the rationale was that we have been having certain properties that have been hosting what we believe are more than the 10 allowed events. We do have some legal action against certain individuals as well who have been going against the rules and hosting events outside of the regulations. So that's why the special event permit was in. It was recommended as a tool. Other local governments have permitting systems as well. It's our only tool in our toolbox to be able to keep track of the events that farms are hosting. So they're only allowed 10, but unless we have a permitting system, we have no idea. And there's no way for neighbors to be advised in advance of events. So certain people on farms are hosting more events than they should, and it's upsetting neighbors, and so there are conflicts.
Thank you.
sorry, you're good, thank you. I have Director Birch-Jones and Director Richmond.
Thank you, Chair. Just a response to Ms. Needham that if complaints are coming in from neighbors around events, you have a complaints-based process for following up on noise or whatever it is. But I think that Director Mack is certainly in Area B. We spent a long time on the AAC for Area B, discussing with staff why this wasn't a fit for Area B. You know, it's the suggested regulations were like, it started with if it's a gathering of 0 to 50 people, so that includes 2. So if you're going to have 2 people gathering at, say, Fort Barons, which is something which I believe were all brought up at the AAC, then they would have to apply for a permit. Like it was a very restrictive micromanagement, sorry, puppy joining me here. And so it wasn't a fit for Area B at all. And I was really grateful to staff that we were able to end the discussion without imposing this on Area B. And I support this request from the Area C director.
Okay, thank you. Director Richmond.
To Ms. Needham, the properties that are having more than their 10 events, and you're saying there's some complaints or concerns from neighbors. Has the ALC been informed of the fact that they've gone over in their 10 limits? Is there any potential enforcement coming from them, or is it all reliant on?
Thank you, through the chair. So the bylaws are not just the ALCs, they're also ours. So it's part of our Area C zoning bylaw. All farms are allowed to have up to 10 events. Gatherings for an event are now an allowable use. So the ALC is aware, and we also do our own enforcement. The permitting system was put in place so that we can track the numbers, because otherwise we have no idea. People can tell us, well, we did 10 events and they might have done 30 or 40. We have no idea. It's similar to what Pemberton did when they started looking at tracking kind of events, right? You don't really know what the extent of the problem until you actually look at the problem and permit it.
This fall. Yeah, no, I get all that. I know that we have it in our own regulations and it's a tracking tool. I'm just curious if there's often been a conversation at this table when we've talked about rules on ALR and what's ours and what we're enforcing for the ALC. So, and there's often been a conversation around what is the role of the SLRD in terms of enforcement. So I'm just curious if I'm hearing that there's a number of properties that are potentially going over and maybe well over the 10. And if the ALC is aware of it, do they plan any action? Or, you know, I'm trying to see where this sits here. I'm hearing a message from the Area C director. And so
yeah, so I'll just speak to that. So, I mean, technically, we're like the first line of defense. So when people have a noise issue or an issue where there are people trespassing on their property because they're part of a wedding and they're disturbing their animals or whatever, we're the ones they call. And they look at our bylaws and they say this person's going over and this person's doing this and that. So they don't see the ALC as their local government. They see us as their local government and they look to us to do something typically.
So the ALC is not, my question is the ALC aware and doing anything about it? Or is this just simply sitting with us?
The ALC is aware. I'm not sure what they're actioning.
Okay, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of clarifying things. So I've heard that the complaints or the problems are only in the upper Squamish. I'm just wondering if staff can clarify, have we received complaints from Area C about these issues, or the complaints have been from other areas?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's a comment about permits required if you only have 2 to 50, but 2 or 3 people. Is that, or when does the requirement for a permit kick in terms of number of people?
For a farmland special event, it's 1 to 150. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll go to Jenna, then rest of them.
If you can just remind me, when we went through this process, were the permit requirements referred to the Area C AAC for comment?
Oh, I can't recall off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So if there's complaints coming in, they're going to be noise complaints. We have a noise bylaw. So I think that can be used to take care of any complaints that are, and like I say, that's going to be the reason for a complaint is the noise. And we have the noise bylaw, so let's use the noise bylaw to take care of that issue. I don't hear of these complaints. So, you know, and I know that if there was ongoing complaints week after week, I would definitely be hearing, and I'm sure Mayor Richmond would be hearing. We don't hear of these things, so I don't know where they're coming from or how many, but I don't believe there's very many at all. So I just don't believe that this level of bureaucracy is needed to enforce, you know, looking after how these events are run. Or noise is the number one issue. So we have a noise bylaw. So all we need to do is utilize that.
Tony?
Yeah, I guess when we passed this, we maybe didn't have as good a discussion about it as we're having now, which is unfortunate. I support what Russell wants. And I also support this bylaw completely for Area D. We had a public meeting up in at the monastery last spring, I guess. No, last fall. And the message from the community is very clear that they're really not happy with what is happening there, and they want us to do something. It really is toxic. You've got operators saying, "I'll have as many events as I like. There's nothing anybody can do about it," and that's what they're doing. And nobody is doing anything about it. And the other residents who are being affected are saying, "Come on now, let's have some rules in place. Let's do something." So this is part of the response from our staff, that if we require people not to pay a fee, but to register with a permitting process that we're having an event on such and such a date, it's a wedding or whatever it might be, then we've got that on file. And when they get up to 10, we've now got some knowledge that they've had the 10. And one property last year probably had 30. And people from that property are saying things to other people that don't have farm status. Hey, just get 2 cows, keep them for 6 months in the day, and then you can get farm status, then you can have 10 events. You know, that's the kind of conversation that's going on up there. And I really think we need to do something about it. And we need to be seen to be doing something. The people that are affected, not just by the noise, but by parking, by traffic on the road, you know, we need to take some action. We need to be supportive of the people that are living in the community and don't want to be disturbed Saturday after Saturday after Saturday. You know, I've got another person who said, "Well, I can have 10 events, but then I can have family events." Well, yeah, so this is my second cousin, third time removing things like that. Staff, Lee needs something, our bylaw officer needs something to help her. I've talked to Gareth Bradley from the RCMP, they need something as well. And so, you know, I fully support it for my area, and I really understand Russell's objections. So, thank you.
I guess I'm wondering if staff are able to remind me of what consultation was done in the lead up to this. And I guess where I'm going is we sort of recently had a discussion, made some decisions. I was part of 1 or 2 of them as an alternate, but I don't know, I saw all the presentations, but you know, we decided a couple months ago this was a good idea. And now we're hearing from a director that it's not, and you know, it's quite possible we missed something or whatever, but I just, you know, want to make sure that we're not sort of making the wrong decision again too quickly. And so just try to get some sense from staff of how much engagement were we able to do before we approved it last time, and just to make sure we're getting all sufficient information to make an adjustment.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
I believe it went to the AAC, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, well, I would say that the resolution here is to send staff back to do this work and bring it back forward for consideration of the agreement. And then we can have more information at that time and make a decision based on the information that we have. Is that fair to everybody? Does that support the work that we're trying to do? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I've enjoyed the discussion here. I think when this was originally discussed, I remember that area A and B being excluded and the rationale for that. So to come back and pull another piece out, I guess if that's what's necessary, then we can do that. But it is a little a little frustrating to touch it in additional time. But I would like to understand the complaints that have been coming from this area as we're looking at now. I know it was recently added regulation, but as we're pulling regulation, as we're deregulating, essentially is what we're doing at this point to understand what the risk of considering to do so is. But I'm supportive of having that conversation, but I'd like that piece of information to help me with sort of reconcile those things.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to individual complaints. We could speak to complaints on a sort of more global basis, but there are certain properties where we actually don't get complaints, but we're fully aware that they've basically turned farmland into full-on commercial operations, right? Because they're huge properties, nobody hears and nobody says anything. But that is probably even the larger issue beyond noise is that when a property that's in the ALR becomes commercial in nature as opposed to agricultural, and if that's where the bulk of the money is coming from, it creates a speculative effect and it drives up prices of farmland. That's the more concerning issue. If we say we're concerned about farming and food security, that's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff that goes on, we don't even know about because the farms are so big and the events are happening sort of off in the hinterland, especially in area C, because a lot of the events can happen down by the river. Nobody's around to hear it. Yeah.
And my intent would be that when this comes back, we have some more formalized rationale that way or statistics to work from or something. I support that this is something that area directors would like for their area. I just want to make sure that we're doing right. So I'd like to see that at the next touch point.
Okay. Russell, then Tony, then Jenna. Bye, Russell.
Yeah, I just have to be polite here, but we're not having the issues that we think we're having. And these farms, some of these are generational farms, and the ALC has put in place that they can have these events, and these events are making them or be financially viable to stay in business as farms. Farms now are very, very expensive, obviously, to operate. When you're talking $100,000 a tractor and all the other equipment, fuel, fertilizer, on and on. So they're all diversifying, trying to get other income. A lot of the family members are off working in the community, running businesses in the community to keep the farm going. So this is about enhancing the farm. And these folks are not having people running amok all over their property, because if they've got crops planted, that's part of their income and they're going to save that. So when they have these events, if you know where the events are, I do, they're almost, shall we say, on the farm home plate. That's where they are. They're not out in the middle of a crop. So, I think the facts have to be straight here. Like if Director Rainbow's got an issue where he is, fine and dandy. We don't have an issue here. So, that's why I'm saying, and I should have never voted for this in the first place. I should have at the time said, no, we don't need this, as Director Birch Jones did. We don't need it in our area. So.
The only concern I'm getting right now is I don't want this put on the shelf and not available to be used in area D, sort of effective immediately.
I don't think it would affect anything until it's amended, so the work will go and then it'll come back to us, so. I think you're safe there, and Director Stoner, you're good? Okay, so the recommendation is that we ask staff to go and do this work and bring it back to us with evidence about bylaw enforcement, noise complaints, number of events, et cetera, that we're hearing about, to give us more information before we make a decision. Director Birch Jones? You're muted. You're muted.
Okay, thank you. The composition of the Area C AAC has changed, and maybe it's worth running this by them as well. And I suspect that they may find that it's not a fit for Area C, just like it's not a fit for Area B. Partly it's well, when you read carefully the permitting process, it is excruciatingly detailed. And I just think why we spend so much time trying to control what's happening on farmland. What we have is a problem with supporting farmers to make their operations vital. I mean, that's what Lillooet Agriculture and Food is trying to do here in our area. And man, it's like a steep hill that we're climbing. We're pushing this rock. It's just, I just don't understand why the Agricultural Land Commission and some of these other bodies aren't doing more that actually support farming versus, you know, this sort of controlling and regulation that is often discouraging. And our farmers need cash, like they really do. They're struggling to survive with the income that they're earning just based on their crops. And we want them to produce those crops because we really do believe in food security. So yeah, my comments, I support the amendment.
Yeah, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'm opposed. Just to clarify.
You're opposed. Thank you.
Got one comment, if I can. In Area B, if people drove through there on the other side of the river on the east side, we had the airport garden. And it was a U-pick where you go in and buy vegetables there. And all the years that we lived in Williams Lake, we always picked up there. And sometimes a couple 100 pounds of tomatoes to make tomato sauce. It's in some Italian. And it's dead. And why did it die? Right? So whatever can be done to have a place like that available is so important for us. So I think I kind of agreement with some of these various regulations that are put on them. I don't know if it was the regulations that finally made them stop going or was family issues or whatever it was, but it was a phenomenal place.
I will say that there are sessions every year at local area associations, UBCM, at FCM, talking about viability of agricultural land and the reason we need to protect it. And it's not because of one farm here in Area C or one farm up in Area A, but we're talking about farmland in Langford and farmland in Ladner that is being scooped up and lost forever and contaminated, and the loss of that food sustainability in our province is of vital importance. So I don't think that this is against one guy who wants to have weddings out at his property along the river. I think this is more about the sanctity of our agricultural land and why we need to protect it. And I don't want to undermine the work that our local communities do to protect these farms by making it too bureaucratic. But I think that there's something to be said for when you read the legislation around the protection of the agricultural land reserve, it's a slippery slope. And I think this is a bigger conversation than what this particular issue is dealing with today. So I think that this is a good conversation for us to maybe bring back to maybe the whole in the future, so that we can talk about, you know, our priorities. It's not in our top 3 at the moment, but I think it will become that. And let's have that conversation when we're prepared to do so. Go ahead.
I just want to make some comments on my opposition, and I think it's more so a matter of process in terms of the amount of time that we have already put in terms of staff resources, the conversations that we've already had about whether we should actually wade into this at all. We've had a fulsome debate about it around this board table in terms of whether the ALC was going to be able to do it and whether they had the resources, and how we kept on getting complaints that were not being responded to by the ALC. And so it put our staff in a really challenging position. We asked them to come up with something that would enable them to start to track this, understand what the scope of the problem was, and then lower the bar so that there was a very limited bar to entry for farmers. So there is no fee attached to the permit system. And so that is why I'm actually opposed to the motion, is because I think that we should actually let this play out for a year and see how it goes, and we can tweak it after the fact. But to bring it back before you even had a chance to let it fly seems like we're stepping backwards on a lot of work that we've done and a lot of time we've put into it.
Thank you for that. Let's move along to 9.3 Area A Fire Services Review Funding. And
Yeah,
feel like
I'd
this
like
was
to
amended.
talk to this.
yeah,
Both these services are a contribution service as far as the tax requisition, which are a little bit different. And the GunLink Fire is a parcel tax service. And the tax requisition has to go in by the end of February. And once it's in, staff can't go back and change it. So it was funded through the tax requisition. And but we had the presentation, Fire Services Review presentation in our EAD meeting in March. And once I saw the presentation, I thought, this could cause problems. And that's why I made these 2 resolutions, is to fund them through our, try to stay away from any issues that could come out of the taxpayers having to pay for the review. So I'll move both of these.
okay. Did you want to speak to that?
Just quickly, because this is it's an interesting point related to the way we're compelled to budget and account for services. And my only comment would be there, with the addition of a fire chief on staff, the work that individual or office does will be requisitioned from the electorate based on where that work's directed. So this is part of the way we operate.
I have a mover and a seconder. Any further questions or comments? Go ahead, Director Birch-Jones.
Thank you. Just a question for staff when they have time. I should be doing something like this in Area B. I would hope they would just tell me. And in fact, I have a meeting scheduled with Maud, I think on the 27th, and I'm really happy to be meeting with her because I've been so impressed with the work she's done. So I will follow that up, and hooray for you for doing this. So good.
Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. I can't read that. Okay, a request for funding from the Lillooet Sheep Pasture Golf Club. A golf course or a golf course aerator. I believe it is the golf course aerator. Move. Director Mayor? Yeah.
Are they a private business? Or are they a community?
Oh, this is Vivian. Vivian, go ahead.
This is a nonprofit society that operates the golf course. Yes, and I provided them with quite a bit of support over the past few years, and I am so impressed with what they are getting done. It's absolutely a lovely operation. And yeah, I will certainly move that we commit $16,270 from electoral area B PELT funds towards the replacement of the golf course aerator, cost of planned improvements to the water infrastructure, and 3 golf club sets to add to the rental inventory.
Moved, Director Demers, or I had you moving it, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Comment?
No, it's just, I was, you did it.
Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And in the spirit of community, Area D is contributing 10 dozen golf balls to the pasture. Most of which picked up by my dog.
Ah, lovely. All right, Lillooet Agricultural Food Society, Director Birch Jones. Would you like to move?
Yes, I'd like to move that Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society be funded $32,000 from Area B PELT funds for their 23-24 operational plan to support their endeavors throughout the year. And the plan is in your package.
Thank you. Seconder, Director Herford. Comments? Questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, 2 pieces of correspondence for information. We've got with receipt. Yeah, let's do one at a time. So provincial responses to the resolutions package is an incredible big piece of work for Jamie Justison. She puts months of work into this, and we're grateful to her. And I do encourage you, before we attend the Area Association AGMs this year, to look through those responses, consider your interests, and be prepared to speak to some new resolutions this year, so that we can make the most of our time. With that, move receipt of that. Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Demers. Comment?
Can I speak to the Ministry of Forestry?
Yeah.
Or are you on number 1?
We're on 11.1, which is the provincial responses to the resolutions.
Okay, I'd like to speak to the EB 62.
Okay.
Yeah. This is very interesting, their comments back, because they're just starting to implement some of the 3 objectives that they got. One is an online map where they have to submit all their cutting permits. And going back about 5-6 years ago, the Kamloops Forest District actually was doing that. They just started doing that. And you go onto their map and you could click on whichever licensee you wanted, and it would show up all the cutting cut blocks that were harvested, all the ones that were green up where they could log beside again, and then all their new ones. And the plan was to have them for 5 years moving forward. That's that first objective. I still haven't seen anything on it. The forest landscape planning will be coming out shortly, where people will be able to engage in the landscape planning program. And the third one is their forest operation plans, where they're going to require a community input. And as it's stated there, and those are cutting permits. If they don't get enough, if the ministry doesn't get enough, if they feel they haven't had enough community engagement, then they can actually not give approve it until they do. So recently in our area, because the PRVCA over the years has had a land use committee, have engaged with the 3 major licensees, and now they're starting to come. In fact, with Aspen Planners, you can go on their website and they have their cut block maps and the KLML files. They don't have their site plans yet on them, but hopefully that'll come also. But it's definitely a move in the right direction. So for this year's UBCM, like last year, they reach out for the EAD directors for anything they want a presentation on. Last year I did it for rural roads, and it was actually presented on. And this year it's going to be this. Where are you at? How's the actual engagement going to look like? What are the criteria on the cutting permit plan, the forest operations plan? Who do they have to communicate with, and how are they going to do it? And that's going to be my proposal for a presentation at the EAD UBCM.
Okay.
Very,
there's a
very
lot,
good.
there is a lot of work going on around this province with Prince George losing 330 new jobs or old jobs last week. Prince Rupert over in Port McNeill. All of these communities are struggling to find their foothold in this new reality. And so I'm actually attending a session on April 13th with this organization. It's much bigger.
It is.
And yeah.
I've got the deferral map. So all the old growth deferrals, all of the polygons. And last night, I spent an hour with a few of the different community members that are going to be affected by the logging that's going on, that Aspen Platers give us stuff for. And I put up a couple blocks on Google Earth. It was a virtual meeting. And then I put up all the old growth non-legal that we have in our area. And then I uploaded the deferred. And it's amazing. And you can and I also have a KML file for all the harvested areas that have ever been harvested in BC in our area. So that you really get a visual of where everything is at compared to the cut blocks that they're actually planning. We've got two issue cut blocks. One is at Gun Lake, which is right next to private property with a forestry road. When the licensee road is right behind the property. So when we got another one at Marshall Lake, where I've also got all the intakes for their water licenses. And the cut block is in between two creeks that come down. So those two are going to have individual sessions with. So you start seeing some of the issues that local areas where the harvesting is actually taking place, because that's what this is about. And being able to communicate back that, what can we do to mitigate any impact from these cut blocks?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So we've moved that. I think that was a post motion. Okay, call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Growing Communities Fund. Craig. Want to start us off? Do you want me to start off?
I'm happy to wait either way. Yep.
Okay, so I think that this is a conversation we can't have in 10 minutes. It's just not possible. This is a tremendous gift from the province to address the fact that the number of gas tax fund projects in this province were not funded because it was so oversubscribed. And the minister looked around the province and said, there are 1,000 projects in this province that haven't been funded. How do we shovel money off the back of the truck? We've got these billions that we need to distribute to communities where they know they can use it the most effectively. And we don't want to tell them how to spend it, but we do want to tell them that they've got to put it in a reserve. They've got to have a plan for it, and they've got to report back to us and tell us how they've used it. This is for capacity building. This is for growing communities. This was distributed on a formula based on current population and your projected growth based on your last census. So Pemberton, 32%. So I think, when I've been in these discussions, this is incredibly positive. we need to be thoughtful. We need to be careful. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to receive the money, do our asset management plan, and then really thoughtfully distribute this money based on the needs that have been identified by our board strategic priorities, the area director's strategic priorities, and and really maximize the value of this money. Because this isn't going to be an annual thing. This is a one-time distribution of funds. So if anyone would like to add to that, or Craig, I'll turn it over to you. And then we can.
And I think you've touched on the major points, Chair. From a staff perspective, in order to be able to enable the board to have a good conversation, we think that asset management work being done is critical, and that is going to come to the board in May. That also gives us some time to look at what other pieces of work might not be, or priorities might not have been looked at by that asset management plan, and bring that back to the board. And I think a number of directors around the table have mentioned, there's no rush to get this out. There's, a need to be thoughtful. It's a great opportunity. And something to consider might be looking out to June as an example, to dedicate some good time to a committee of the whole meeting after we've been able to bring that information to the board.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, just going into that discussion, it would be helpful to know what sort of relevant policy exists. And so like strategic plan might be one thing. I know there's been discussions and there's formulas around payments in lieu and grants in lieu of taxes. I don't know if there's any sort of philosophical stated underpinnings of that, but just those sorts of things, or an idea of when we win a lottery or there's a windfall, we invest in capital as opposed to operations, and just understanding what policy or philosophies exist already would be helpful.
Thank you. Director Mack?
Yeah, I just don't want everybody to lose sight of the fact that all the municipalities got their allotment, right? And the elected area, the directors for those 4 areas in our regional district, that money that came to the regional district, a certain percentage of that money should go directly into those areas for new water mains, whatever we as directors decide for our area.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't take your money, Russell.
Well, no, I don't want that to be lost.
It won't be, I promise. Okay, anyone else? Go ahead.
I'd just like to say I appreciate taking the time and to do have a strategic look at this and ensure that it has a maximum impact for the areas where it's invested, and not just put into lowering a general tax increase over as a hot potato sort of move. And I think that this can go a lot further for our organization with this approach. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, with that, I'll ask for a motion to receive this letter. Moved by Director Herford, seconded by Director Rainbow. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Any late business? Other than that, 13.1, over to CAO Dalton.
Well, thank you, Chair. This similar to a report that came to the board last month related to the Fire Smart program. This was an unforecasted retirement, and when the planning department looked at how best to respond to this, the results are what you see in the report before you. So it's an opportunity to look at whether or not it makes sense to move that from 0.5 to 0.1, and our recommendation that it's time we do that from a service delivery perspective. And so that's why this was brought forward at the last minute, and again because of the budget window closing as well.
I'll move that as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Comments? Thank you for your work on this. Call a question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And Oh, okay. Director's report from Director Birch Jones regarding $7,000 for Area B tax service funding. Why does that mean? Go ahead, Director Birch Jones, if you want to speak to it.
Thank you. Just Ms. LaFrance was kind enough to spend lots of time with me on the Area B budgets and the shared budgets and so forth. She's such a joy to work with. And as a result, we have one change we'd like to make, and she's already updated the budgets for me. So I would like to move on budget number 1706 to contribute up to $7,737 from Area B PILT funds towards the Lillooet fire protection budget. And this is for two things, as outlined, a request from the District of Lillooet, and their request is for $4,982, and also some staff time that's already been spent in 2022 and allocated in 2023 for the rest, $655.36 and $2,100 estimated in 2023. So actually the resolution should read up to $7,737 from Area B PILT. I'd like to move that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks.
And correspondence for information. Someone move receipt. Moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Richmond. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Any notice of motion from anyone? None. Go play the sound mic.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Well done, very good.